We thought the big news this morning was that Sebastian Vettel had joined Instagram.
Yeah.
And we were all wondering, scratching our heads as to why he'd chosen this particular Thursday in Hungary to join Instagram. And then we realised it's because Sebastian Vettel is retiring from Formula One. And of course that sent shockwaves through the paddock. Lawrence, he's been an incredible figure for the sport, both on track and off track. But I want to talk about on track first, because that's how we all grew to know him and love him. What's your standout when it comes to Sebastian Vettel?
I think there's so many things that I can pick up over 15 years or whatever it's been that Sebastian's been in the sport. I've always liked how he's on track. He's really not been afraid to leave it all on the line. Throughout those Red Bull dominant years, he took a car that he was very comfortable with and got the job done consistently. There was that year where he won every single race after the summer break. Like, he was very confident in his own ability. And we saw those moments with Mark Webber when he snatched the win, when he probably shouldn't have snatched the win in Malaysia. So he had that cutting edge about him, that thing that, kind of like Michael Schumacher had, who was one of his heroes and his mentors, that kind of almost win at all costs. And then he's changed a lot, I think, over the years following that.
Well, Multi-21 will of course live on as Sebastian Vettel vernacular. We've seen some great battles. You mentioned with Mark Webber, obviously a teammate, but also with other great names in the sport. Fernando Alonso, I think back to 2014 at Silverstone when they were jostling for position. And then of course with Lewis Hamilton when they were fighting for the championship. But he's always been respectful in those battles on track as well. He's a real thinking driver, isn't he? Knows where to put the car.
Yeah, I think that battle with Fernando, I think they fought really hard in 2012 and they went quite close towards the end of that year as well. What I really liked about Seb is that he was always very fair, I think, with his rivals, with Fernando and with Lewis. I know he had that moment in Baku when he turned into Lewis in a moment of frustration, a bit of red mist. But I think generally I thought he was always very fair throughout his career.
Strategic as well. Remember the Chinese pit lane at Shanghai, knowing where to get the most out of his car and his opportunities as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot about what Seb's really been successful at. Is it's not just about being fast, it's about taking all of those individual factors, that strategy element to it, to getting the team behind him in the way that Michael did very well during his career, to also helping young drivers as well, kind of mentoring the guys like Mick, the next generation coming through. I think we've seen the full spectrum, really, of Sebastian through his career.
Yeah, an incredibly well-rounded human, of course, as you mentioned, looking after the younger drivers, also involved with the the GPDA, there we go, get it right the right way. And then, of course, off track. He's been a real bastion of hope, really, and sort of pushing everybody in the sport to do better when it comes to sustainability, when it came to Black Lives Matter. He's really been engaging in that conversation and really leading the way in that conversation.
Yeah, I've always really enjoyed interviewing Sebastian, mostly when we don't have to talk about Formula One, because I feel like that's when he generally comes alive, just talking about things like reading the Sunday papers and interesting articles that he's read, because he's interested in the world. And you've talked about some of the things that he's done, creating a bee house in Austria, picking up litter, visiting recycling plants at Silverstone after the British Grand Prix. Those things matter to him. He's never been afraid to say what he thinks, ultimately, and that's been whether he's been disappointed by an on-track action or a driver's action, the way that the sport is run. He's never been afraid to do that, and he's taken that out and kind of telling the world we need to look after the environment, we need to be more sustainable, we need to improve diversity and inclusion. And he's using his platform in such an impressive way. And I think to have the mindset and the capacity to do that and still compete out on track, I think is quite an incredible feat.
He will see out the 2022 season with Aston Martin. Last race will be Abu Dhabi, which fittingly will be his 300th Grand Prix, a nice round number to finish it off. But, will we see him back on the podium? We saw him on the podium here in France last year, obviously then disqualified. But there's still a racer in there for the remaining races that he has to compete in.
Definitely, he should have been on the podium, of course, in Hungary last year until there was that fuel issue. So he has still clearly got the ability to perform well. A lot will come down to the car, and at the moment this car is probably around the 9th, 10th best on the grid. So getting a strong result before he leaves Formula One is going to be difficult, not impossible. He's going to get everything because he's got pride and he wants to make sure that he kind of leaves as on a higher note as he can possibly. But I do know that when he leaves, it's going to leave a massive hole in Formula One on track and off track.
Yes, and Lawrence Stroll saying that, the ambition of the team behind us, Aston Martin, is to win races, and he knows that they will do that, or at least thinks that they'll do that, and he knows that Sebastian has set, helped them push forward, and hopefully when they do achieve their target, it will be down to Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, I think it's really important to say that Aston Martin wanted him to stay. They've spent the last 2, 3, 4 months trying to convince him to stay on because of the job that he's done behind the scenes. I know the results haven't really been there, but that experience, 4 world titles, that's quite an impressive catalogue of experience, and he's really helped this team kind of build the foundation blocks. It's just unfortunate, I think, that he's joined the team towards the end of his career. This is very much a long-term project, and Sebastian will probably have needed to stay out 3, 4, 5, 6 years to see the fruits of that. He's got his other things that we've talked about that he wants to kind of build on, and these are becoming more important, spending more time with his family.
Exactly. Well, he's worked with so many people up and down the paddock, so many different teams, mechanics, engineers, all had the privilege to work with him. We've been lucky enough to interview him as well. He will leave a big hole in the sport, and if we're talking in sort of real terms, he's going to leave a seat wide open at Aston Martin. Who do you feel, what type of driver should be looking at Aston Martin?
I think it's going to be a driver who can sit it in for the long haul. They need to bring experience because I think that's what that team needs, but they need to be committed to a project and know that it might take 3, 4, 5 years to get to where they want to get to. They have got the investment, Aston Martin, so they are going to have the facility to do it. On paper, these guys should be contenders for wins and championships in the future. So I think it's a driver with a project. I'm not sure if they're going to go for youth because I think that might be too risky at this point. They're going to want experience, and I'm not sure at this point in time who they're going to be able to get.
Well, I'm sure we will find out in the coming months as driver silly season kicks off. But the big news here in the paddock at Hungaroring is that Sebastian Vettel will be retiring at the end of 2022.